Hello, I'm Paul Matthews. I'm a developer programs engineer on the AdWords API.
And I'm Mark Bowyer, a developer advocate on the same team.
We're going to talk to you about the AdWords API, and in particular, we're going to talk to you about how to start with the AdWords API. So this is really taking a fresh look if you're maybe new to the API, or if there's just some aspects of the API that you don't currently understand.
Please keep in mind that you can scrub backwards and forwards through this as often as you want. We've put title slides in here so you can easily find the bit that you want to find. Loads of links over the top of this that you can click on to go and see the reference material we're telling you about. And just come back to us when you've read up on what you need to know and find out about the next bit.
So in this session, we're going to look at what the AdWords API is, how you might go about interacting with it, how to create a first request, so how to build up that first request and make a call to our servers. We're going to look at the reporting aspects of the AdWords API, tools that surround the AdWords API, and then we're going to look at the manual, which is a really important part for understanding the documentation that's available to you. And then finally, we're going to look at how we support the AdWords API and how that can be useful to you, and how to contact us.
So, what is it and what can you do with it? Well, AdWords is for managing your adverts on either Google Search or Display Network, optimizing your ads, getting ad ideas to come up with an extension of what you're already doing in your ads, and then we give you a web interface for users to go in, set up their ads, line up the text for it, add anything that they want onto there, and then set them up to go and serve. Then once you know what you're doing with your ads, you may want to automate or grow the way that you're managing it, and we provide an API so you have programmatic interaction with your ads, and also you can integrate the data within your ads to say your own software that you already have managing other parts of your business.
Okay, so that's what the AdWords API is. Now what can you do with it? Well, for starting off, the main use that you're going to use the AdWords API for is retrieval. So that means that you can get all your information that's currently stored in AdWords, all those campaigns, all those accounts, all those ad groups and criterions that you've set up with it, and you can get that information back so that you know that so that you can keep a local store of it for whatever purposes. Then you can use the AdWords API to manage those entities. So basically, you can interact with your ads, you can interact with your campaigns, you can interact with your criterions, and really affect how your ads are displaying. You can adjust your bidding so that you can up your bids, or adjust it so that you're getting more effective bidding strategies. You can adjust your targeting, so you make sure that you really finely tuning your ads to the right people. And finally, you can update your ad text. With all of that, you can also do bulk uploads. So if you're considering putting in a lot of new ads into the system, or doing a lot of mutations to your campaigns and things, then you can do that using the API, and you can bulk upload that. And finally, you can do keyword research. So that means if you know roughly what sort of keywords you want to target, but you're not exactly sure of the entire landscape, the other keywords that may be associated to it, then you can do some keyword research, which can offer you some really good alternatives. So the main purpose of the API is automation. This is for you to automatically interact with our services without having to have a user sit there and do anything with them. So, for instance, you might use some sort of script that would automatically adjust your bids on your umbrellas if today was a wet day and you knew that customers were more likely to buy on a wet day. You can also do updates across your account. So if, for instance, you wanted to update all of your bids globally to outbid your competitors, then you would be able to just do an automatic bid of 10% more, for instance. It also allows you to hook into your application. So if you happen to have, let's say, an e-commerce platform and you wanted to hook your ads into your inventory management, then perhaps you could set up a link between the two applications, so that when you ran out of inventory or something, you would turn off an advertisement, or you would, as you got more inventory, you would up your ads to make more of a presence on that to improve your return on investment. And then finally, you can do a lot of reporting with the AdWords API. So what that means is it allows you to collect reports for your accounts. So for instance, things like impressions, and you can really retrieve a lot of information on how your ads are doing. It'll also allow you to gather all of your information in a structured way very simply and easily, but more on that later.
So, how do you use it?
Okay, so for starters, the main concepts you want to understand are the entities and the services, and more on services in a second, but right now we're going to look at the entities. So entities are things, concepts that should be pretty familiar with you at this point in time. So for instance, customer, that's you, that's how you log in. You've got your ad groups, so that's like the groups of ads. You've got your ads themselves, campaigns and criteria, and these are entities that live within our system. And then the services allow you to interact with those entities. So for instance, if we have a look at the campaign service, then that will allow you to interact with the campaign entity. So for instance, if you wanted to retrieve information about the current campaigns that are already in your AdWords accounts, then you could use a selector object sent to the get service, to the get action on the campaign service, and it'll allow you to retrieve information about your campaigns. Then you can do operations. So once you've got this information, then perhaps you want to adjust this information, for instance, adjusting your ad text or adjusting your campaign targeting. And basically this operation will, so you send an operation object to the mutate action of the service that allows you to affect a campaign. And finally, you can do queries. So this is back to reporting, and we'll talk more about this later on. But essentially, you don't need to send an object to the query action. It's more of just a string. So it's a very simple interface for you there. And that's the main purpose, and that's the main sort of structure you're going to see with any service in the AdWords API.
So then SOAP. SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol, and this is the text language that is used to pass information from your code back to our backend, and then from our backend back to you. It's an XML-based form protocol for exchanging structured information backwards and forwards between our two sets of code. What does it look like? Well, you can do a discovery. There is WSDL, which is Web Service Definition Language. You do a request onto our service. You will find this on the documentation pages that tells you what each service looks like and what you can do to it. The SOAP request itself comes in an envelope. It has a header, which then has your authentication and your authorization information, and a body, which is the request that you're trying to make on our service. You will then get back a response that's formatted in a similar way. Finally, we give you logging and debugging tools, so you can switch on inside your code using the client libraries a logging system that stores in files each of the requests you make in the original SOAP and the SOAP response you get back. And you can look through those and try and figure out what's just gone wrong for you. Also, because these are just plain text files, you can just send the XML to our servers using something as simple as curl. So you can do it from the command line, or you can write a shell script to try and test out these files.
Okay, so that brings us on to the client libraries, and this is really where we try and help you integrate with our API. So these are libraries that have been written by Googlers that really aid your integration with our services. For starters, they're available in most of the common languages such as Java, Python, Ruby, .NET, PHP and Perl, and they're all written in a very clear, defined way for those languages, so they should become very familiar for you. They are auto-generated, as Mark was talking about before. The WSDLs offer a description of the services, so these client libraries are in a good proportion generated based on the WSDLs available. So that means that they offer objects that closely map to the API as first world objects within your application. They come with a load of utilities that really help you to make the most out of the API without writing the minimum possible code. So for instance, we take care of things like OAuth 2 for you. We try and make just the code you have to write, just the logic you need to interact with our services. They also come with utilities such as safe logging, which means that when you do want to log a request, if you're trying to understand what's going on, or if you just happen to want to log every request, then we try and smudge out the sensitive parts so that there's no worry about anything that's being logged. And then, most importantly, the client libraries come with some really helpful examples. Now, these examples will help to teach you how to use the APIs in in unique ways, in discrete ways, sorry, to make requests and get responses. And the examples come in two parts. So there's the simple examples, which are really focusing on how to make a single request to the service and back again, and they cover most of the endpoints, certainly the most popular ones, and they show you how to construct a request and send it to the services and how to process the response. And then there's the advanced examples, which sort of cover slightly more in depth. They sort of go over a bunch of different services to help you achieve a bigger objective. So for instance, if you wanted to interact with the feed services, there's about 4 different endpoints, 4 different services you want to talk to, and this shows you how to construct a request talking to each of those services to link them all together and to interact and create a feed. And they're very worthwhile, and there are examples in each of the client libraries, and they're definitely worth a look.
So, MCCs, developer tokens, and test accounts. Now, MCC stands for My Client Center, which is a tool for larger advertisers so that they can manage multiple client-customer accounts that would normally be seen in AdWords. So, with an MCC account, you can see the many client advertiser accounts, but you can also have sub-MCC accounts, and you can therefore have a hierarchy of managers over account managers, and each having different levels of access over different numbers of advertisers. Developer tokens are there to grant your application access to the AdWords system. This is just for the application. This isn't how you access as a login specific areas of AdWords. You get one in your AdWords account, and you use it with every request that you send in to AdWords. It's in the header. Whether you're doing any SOAP endpoint, any reporting, you need to have a developer token in there to authenticate that this application is allowed to make this request. The client libraries do some of the legwork here for you, so you can just put your developer token into your properties file and it will try and do the rest of that for you. You need to apply for the developer token and have approval of it. As you go on through the process of developing your application, you will need to have a fully approved developer token for your application to have full access to live data in AdWords, and that process requires you to go through a compliance test with our terms and conditions. And it is, please remember, tied to the application and not to you logging into the system as an account. It's authorizing your application, whereas you have other login information for saying where you are allowed to view with your application.
I guess also on that point, we strongly recommend that you do not give your developer token to anybody else, because if that does happen, then it will appear to us as though you are making these requests. So do not put it in any forums, do not put it in any communications to any other users, and try not to send it to us over sort of emails or anything like that either, just for security's sake. Okay, so that brings us neatly onto test accounts. Test accounts are essentially accounts there to help you develop your application. So they are safe accounts. They are not going to they cost you money. So you can test your application, you can try out new API requests to them with no fear of any financial implications of that. So for instance, they won't serve to the display networks or to the Google network. You will just be able to interact with them, set up campaigns and everything in the way that you would in your application, but then they won't serve. So this is really useful for testing sort of manipulation and requests and retrieval requests. However, for things like reporting, although you'll get reports back, you won't necessarily get useful information in there. So for instance, they're not going to tell you a lot of information about what you paid cost per click, because essentially they haven't been displayed. Test accounts, again, require a developer token. You can't just request, you can't just call a test account without a developer token. But sometimes, or during the approval process, you'll be granted a test account should you be successful, and then you can interact with a test account before you necessarily go ahead and create sort of requests that would otherwise cost you money. So for instance, if you wanted to up the bids or something like that. Okay, and there's some more information about test accounts, which I strongly recommend you go to that link.
So, reporting.
Okay, so reporting. We talked about this briefly. So basically, what reporting offers you is there's performance statistics. So reporting allows you to get information about how your ads that have been displayed are doing, and also ads that have not yet displayed. So obviously they're going to be coming back with much less useful information, but they will still appear. So you'll be able to get sort of information about what you paid cost per click and also how you're spending overall. They also come with resource statistics or multi-point resource data. So for instance, if you've got you know, like text that you want to find out about, if you want to just retrieve all the information about your keywords that are there, then you get that information back. How you make requests on the reporting services is two simple ways. So firstly, there's the SOAP request, as you do similar to the other services, and they're very simple to construct. You know, you just construct a request and then you send it to our servers, and we respond in either sort of CSV or XML. Or you can use this tool called AWQL or AdWords Query Language, which Mark is going to talk about in a second. And the main purpose for reporting and the main benefit for reporting is very, very fast. It's also very easy to use, so it's a really good starting point for anybody who's trying to get information from their campaigns or from their accounts. It's a really good way to understand the data that's available. And below is a link to the reports and the different kind of reports available to you and what information you can get from them.
Okay, so AdWords Query Language, or AWQL. This is a very lightweight SQL-like interface that allows you to just send a string with an SQL-looking request to our report systems, and that will then feed you back the same kind of output that you would get from the report definition system. It can be CSV, it can be XML. You can request that the file that comes back is gzipped up to make it as small as possible. We have a guide on how to do this, and you can see that at the link at the bottom of this page.
Okay, so now that we know how to talk to the reports, what are the different uses besides the obvious? So the obvious one is maybe requesting performance statistics, so getting sort of information about how your ads are displaying, what your CPC is, and that sort of thing. Or so the other main use for reporting is to get structural information. So if you're trying to build a local representation of your ads, of your campaigns, of all those different entities, then quite often you can find that the reports are there to help you. So they're very quick and they respond and they're very easy to integrate with. So you can get a full sort of account overview very quickly, and you can store that perhaps locally and do processing on it and use it for other means. And then, as I said before, so monitoring performance is the main use for reporting.
There is also a link here to a guide on how to gather the structural information from reports and build a local SQL database that you can then run your own requests on. Okay,
so AdWords API scripts. So AdWords scripts is a really useful tool to be used with AdWords. Essentially, it's similar to the app script interface in that it comes with a web IDE and allows you to write your scripts online, hosted on our servers. So for instance, if you don't currently have any infrastructure to host an application to request us to our servers, then perhaps this is the way forward for you. So essentially it offers the majority of the functionality in a simple JavaScript interface, but obviously it's not integrated with your applications, with your client, with your systems. So this is more for doing things like if there's an API out there that gives you, for instance, the weather information, and you're a umbrella salesman, then you would set up a script that perhaps would query for weather information, find out if it's raining, and then up your bids because it's a simple sort of standalone script. Okay, and it's a really useful tool, and I highly recommend checking out. It's actually available inside your accounts as they are now. You can just go to bulk options, and then there's scripts for you, and you can start to test it there.
So, the reference manual. Inside there you'll initially find information about the client libraries that we've just been telling you about. These also include the source of the examples for each of those different languages to show you how to use these client libraries. Full documentation is also there for those. Then there are the guides. These have more information on each of the topics, talk you through how to use the services that are available to do various different use cases that you may have need for to use with AdWords. For instance, we have stuff in there with how to use reporting, the structured reporting one we discussed earlier, and the scripts. It's a situation that Paul was talking about checking the weather and upping and downing your bids for umbrellas and maybe sun oil or whatever to get the right things appearing on pages when you need them to. We're frequently adding new guides to these as well. As new features are added to AdWords, we write guides to show you how to use the new features. Then there's the reference section, which gives you all the information about the services and the WSDL files for each of those services. So you can go in and you can read about the objects, the inheritance hierarchy, the parameters and the return info that are available from each of those services, possible error messages that you can get from them. These work well with the guides. Once you've got the general idea of what you want to do, you can dig into the reference manuals for the services you found out about and see exactly what they make available to you. There are release notes for each of the current versions of the API that we have out there for you to use, and also the sunset dates. As we continually replace them with newer and better versions, we let you know how long the current version is going to last and when you're going to need to update to a newer release. Finally, there's a resources section that gives you system-specific information about each of the areas. For instance, there's migration guides in there that tell you what's changed from one release to the next, and what changes you need to make to your code so that it can run with the new version of the API. There's also type information, report types, what you can request, and which fields are available in those reports for you to make use of. And there are also system codes in there, so various bits of explanatory data about how the API works. Again, there is a link at the bottom of this page which will take you in to show you those documentation pages.
Okay, so we've been talking about the AdWords API, but what have we actually covered? So we discussed what the AdWords API is and what it can do for you. We've discussed how you interact with the AdWords API, and we've looked at making a first request with the client libraries, for instance. Then there's the reporting aspects and what that offers for you, and the tools such as AdWords scripts. And then we've been looking at the manual and how to make sense of the AdWords user manual, AdWords API user manual, sorry. And now we're going to just talk briefly about the support that we offer and how you can contact us.
So there is a blog on Blogspot specifically about Google's Ads developer program. There's also, of course, a plus page that has similar information. We have more depth on the blog page and more news-like information on the plus page. And finally, there is a forum where you can go meet other people also working in this area and discuss your problems and hopefully get fixes from the developer program engineers like Paul, and you can discuss any problems you're having with them.
Okay, so we hope this video has been useful for you. We hope you come back and sort of scrub through it and seek through it to find the particular parts that are of most use to you. And there should be plenty of links in here that will take you to the correct resources within the AdWords API documentation, and they will help you get to where you need to go faster. Thank you.
Thank you.